Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we're going to be talking Armada, and we're talking about the Vanguard title for the Nebulon B. The Vanguard is a new title that is coming in Rebellion in the Rim, and this is one of those titles that is going to add something that this ship has really wanted, and that it's a way for you to get a redirect token on the Nebulon B. So we're going to talk all about this title, how you can use it, different configuration options, what I think of it, and some ways that you might build with this. But before I dive too far into this, I want to remind you guys about the $100 Amazon gift card giveaway that's going on right now. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos to enter to win that giveaway. I will be announcing the winner to that after the first week of September. So you got plenty of time left still to enter. I will announce that at the end of one of my videos, so make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you watch all the way to the end, and if it helps you out, you can click that little bell for alerts so you'll get notifications when a new video comes out. So with that out of the way, let's talk about this title. So this is one of 4 titles we're getting in the Rebellion in the Rim expansion. That is not officially out yet, but it should be coming out hopefully very soon. I was able to get my copy early at Gen Con, so, and as well as anybody who was there, and that's kind of how we're able to bring you, coverage of the content that's inside, thanks to the early, pre-release. And because we still haven't gotten really a spoiler article for Rebellion in the Rim yet, although as of the time of me recording this, we haven't. At the time it actually publishes, they may have surprised me and kind of given us a spoiler article. But the Vanguard title is something that we're getting in here. Now, one of the things that's great about a title for a ship like this is that this is a ship that everybody has. Well, I say everybody, but I'm talking about everybody who bought the core set got at least one Nebulon B in there. Now, sometimes people will split up a core set and trade away their ships that they're not going to use. But in general, probably everybody has at least one Nebulon B. So I think by them focusing the Rebellion in the Rim titles on covering at least all 4 or all 3 of the ships, and there's those 4 titles, but the 3 ships that are found in the core set, was a great way for them to breathe some new life into this game and try to touch as many people as you can, because if you play Armada, you have at least one ship from the core set. I'm almost certain of that. So how could you not, really? So the Vanguard is going to say 2 different things, and it's only a 4-point title, so it's not terribly expensive, but it's going to give you 1 additional weapons team icon in your upgrade bar as the first part. Now, that part, is easy to kind of gloss over because you see that redirect symbol at the bottom, but so you can miss the first part. Yeah, now I'm going to talk about the first part a little bit. Now, that weapons team is not something that I usually think that I want to have on a Nebulon B. It's not the first choice for a Nebulon B for me. When I think of things that I would want the Nebulon B to have, I can easily think of things like, well, maybe I would want, an extra officer slot or an extra turbo laser slot. Turbo laser, they're red dice heavy, so maybe I would want something like that. Maybe a defensive retrofit would kind of help keep me alive sometimes. Maybe, different things like that. But I definitely do not tend to think of a weapons team, primarily because of the types of upgrades that are found in weapons team don't really multiply the strengths of the Nebulon B. They don't really multiply the strengths. If anything, they add a very little bit of functionality, and I think maybe that was the purpose of kind of going with an upgrade that wasn't going to break a ship. And I don't think anybody really wanted a Nebulon B title to end up having to cost 20 points because it totally breaks a ship, because then they'll just revert back to the existing titles they already have. But then the second part is what is kind of really attractive to a lot of people, and that says at the start of the first round, you may replace one of your defense tokens with a redirect defense token. And that is really the key of this particular title, and that it's giving you the ability to redirect. Everybody that I talked to about Nebulons was always saying they wanted it to be able to redirect. They wanted it to be able to redirect because your sides only had the one shield, and you wanted to be able to redirect them to the front. And I was always kind of in the camp, the camp that said, that's great for one shot. You're going to get that one shot to the side that you'll be able to redirect to the front, and then you won't have any shields there anymore. I mean, granted, you also have 2 shields in the rear, but you're really looking to be able to stop that one big shot that you could put a couple of damage off to the front, and that's fine. And for you to be able to do that for the one shot, but it's not like a redirect is going to make this ship. Now, it would be different if you were adding a redirect. I will concede that, but the fact that you have to give something up now really it becomes tricky, because the Nebulon has 2 braces and 1 evade, and so now you have to choose, what do you give up, and that's really the tricky question. So let's go ahead and look at the 2 different types of Nebulons, and then we'll talk about their defense tokens, right? So we've got the Nebulon B support refit. It's probably the one that I tend to use the most, because it's the cheaper option. And you've got your 3 dice in the front, your red and blue on the sides, and then 2 dice in the rear. It's nice that actually the rear is better than the side shots. It's one of those few ships that kind of has a fairly strong rear arc with respect to the rest of the ship. And so that's something I think that kind of makes this ship a little bit unique. I wouldn't mind seeing a title or some kind of functionality one day that really enhances the rear of the Nebulon. I mean, you have the spinal armament, which can also enhance the rear, but it's that's just a weird thing about it. It's got a fairly decent bit of maneuverability on there. Doesn't have a whole lot of upgrades that it can take, so I guess that's one of the things that makes this title good. But if you look at your other version, your escort frigate, really the only thing you're gaining is an extra anti-squadron die and an extra squadron command value. You're going from 213 to 223, and then from 1 blue die and anti-squadron armament to 2 blue die and anti-squadron armament. Now, 2 blue die is fairly good, especially for a ship in the 50-ish points range, so that you could potentially make the argument of, well, I want to be able to attack ships and also do anti-squadron attacks, and there's different things that you can think of for weapons teams, and we'll look at all of those. But right now I'm talking about the defense token option, because one of the things that also makes the Nebulon be a lot more survivable than people tend to think is the fact that they have 2 braces. And that's really a pretty good thing. Combined with an evade, for a ship that's primarily red dice anyway, so it wants to stay at long range, all of their damage, or defense tokens, are damage reduction defense tokens. And damage reduction is great, because once shields run out, redirect doesn't really do anything for you anymore. And at a certain point, even contain isn't all that useful. When you've got a lot of damage coming in and it's enough damage to kill you, you need to be able to reduce that damage. You need to be able to make some of the hits vanish as opposed to just go to shields. So I really like the fact that it has 2 brace tokens, because very few ships do have more than 1 brace token. And thus, that one single accuracy that people tend to roll will screw you over. And for a ship that doesn't have defensive retrofit, doesn't have the capability to take ECM, having 2 braces is really, really strong. So a Nebulon is almost always able to brace when it's being shot. Now, you're usually not shooting it with a whole fistful of like 8 to 10 dice. In those cases, you're probably get all the accuracies you need. But so I find myself kind of wondering, what defense token do we pick up? And I think it's going to depend very greatly on the fleet that you're facing. If you're going up against black dice fleets, then sure, maybe drop the evade. You might not need the evade, because you're probably not going to have to worry about as many long-range attacks. But if you're going up, against maybe anything else, you're then thinking about, do I really even want to do this? Do I want to drop a brace? Do I want to drop a brace? And then all of a sudden now I'm more vulnerable to the single accuracy. And that is also going to happen at long range, because you're keeping your evade, which at some point you won't be able to use. That's the other problem with evade, is at close range you're not going to be able to use it. So I think most people will probably get rid of 1 brace for a redirect. But I'm not sure, because the problem is then you're going to have 2 of your 3 defense tokens will at some point, usually in the late game, become useless. When you run out of shields, redirect is useless. When you run into close range, evade is useless. And unless, of course, you're running Mon Mothma, and that might be something you would consider this way. But I think it's going to be a tough choice to really make people ask, and I think it's going to have a lot to do with the type of fleets that you face. But I think that's probably at least the way you start out. You'll probably start out running it with swapping a brace for a redirect. And there is an officer in the game that's going to make that actually a little bit more effective. So when we get to some of the sample builds, we'll show you that. And it's a new officer that comes in Rebellion in the Rim that kind of mitigates that problem of, oh, well, redirect at some point becomes useless. Well, then we have a new officer that's going to help us out with that. So, but I think when we look at this title, because we're going to get the option to do that, and you can also, by the way, you can choose not to change out your tokens. If the fleet you're going up against, you expect them to throw a ton of red dice at you from the front. Well, then maybe you don't need to redirect, and maybe you'll just decide at some point that you know what, I actually want to be able to cancel a double red die and then brace the rest. So sticking with what I've got might be the best option, and that certainly may be. And I think that's going to become more of a learning curve from playing this title to decide against your opponent what you're gonna run. But I think because this particular title isn't all that game breaking, I think it actually really lends itself to what might be the rise of multiple Nebulon fleets. And multiple Nebulon fleets is something that I'm kind of excited about. It's not like super exciting because I've been able to do that for a while, and I do that. I do it every once in a while. You started off as a joke, and it turned into something that's actually marginally effective. And I think this will be a boost to multiple Nebulon fleets, because there are only, before Rebellion in the Rim, there are only 3 Nebulon titles, only 2 of which generally see play, that being the Salvation and the Yavaris. Those are the 2 we typically see. Salvation for attacking from the front, which is harder to do because that front arc is pretty narrow, but then the Yavaris for its super carrier potential. I don't think we'll see Yavaris go away anytime soon, but I do think, if we start to see fleets run more than one Nebulon, this new title finds itself as a contender for an extra title to go onto a Nebulon. Now, why is this important? Because there are other upgrades coming in Rebellion in the Rim that will facilitate multiple Nebulon fleets. And primarily, I have to give a lot of credit to the Auxilary Shields team. Now, this isn't really a video all about the Auxilary Shields team, because this has a lot of different uses. But I'm going to talk about this particular card because I think this card has a lot to do with why this title is relevant. The Auxilary Shields team is a 3-point support team, and it has the engineering symbol. And the colon, it says, when you do an engineering command, you may treat the maximum shield values of your right and left hull zones as increased by 1 when you recover or move shields to those zones. If you do, the number of shields in the zones cannot exceed a maximum of 4. So since we're not anywhere close to being able to max those out to 4, what this is going to let us do, this is going to let us basically have 3 shields in the front, 2 shields on each of the sides, and 2 shields in the rear. Suddenly our weak side is now almost as strong as our strong side. And that's awesome. I mean, from a certain point of view, it's only 1 extra shield. But it also means you can recover higher. When having that redirect, now all of a sudden a redirect might be a little bit more viable. And so it all kind of feeds into each other, because if you just look at the title in a vacuum, you're thinking it's not that great. But with Auxilary Shields team, it's viable. But the other thing that makes this important is that Auxilary Shields team is so good for the Nebulon that you don't even have to have this token. It's going to increase the survivability of Nebulons that are not running this title, that are running the other titles, or maybe no title at all, because 2 braces and an evade are still very survivable. And with ample shields available, you're much less likely to get one-shotted. So Auxilary Shields team is a huge card in making multiple Nebulon fleets become viable, and now all of a sudden your multiple Nebulons are your ships are much less likely to be one-shotted. It's a lot harder to do that, and all that it's really going to take is for you to have them queue up an engineering command on the first turn, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. And you know what? There's another title for that as well that can help your stuff do all of that. So, and we're going to look at all of that. So, but now going back to our title, I want to go ahead and take a look at the Vanguard is going to grant you a weapons team. So let's look at the different weapons teams that are available, and we'll kind of talk about which ones that we might want to use, which ones we might not, because there are some that I think are not useful at all for the Nebulon, and then there's some that could be, at least under certain circumstances. So, top left, you've got Kaitkin and Sholin. Now, that's not a bad option for these guys. Certainly not, I mean, because it's unique, it's probably better elsewhere, like on maybe a larger ship that's going to roll lots of different colors of dice. But as for a 6-point weapons team, this is when attacking, you may exhaust this card to re-roll any number of dice of a single color. Well, since you're probably only rolling red dice anyway, it gives you an exhaust and lets you re-roll as many dice as you want in your attack pool, because they're probably all red. However, it has the double duty I'm going to throw out the caveat here of when you run Sado, because Sado is actually pretty good with Nebulon fleets, and I think that's something we'll see more of. And in this case, the Kaitkin and Sholin will let you choose to either reroll black dice or red dice, and you'll be able to make the choice when the time comes. Of course, you'll only be able to do that on a single shot, so if you're able to double arc somebody, it's not going to really be as big a deal, but, I like Kaitkin and Sholin. Fire Control Team, and it's not really going to do anything for you. It's going to let you do 2 critical effects. You're not really going to be able to... There's nothing right now that's really going to make that worthwhile. You've got 1 turbo laser that gives you a special crit, but it doesn't stack with the default crit, so there's really nothing you can really do with that. Now, Fire Control Team may eventually become useful if there does end up becoming maybe an officer or if there's new critical type effects that do come out that are available to the Nebulon. Someday in the future, Fire Control Team might become a little bit better. Flight Controllers. Now, Flight Controllers is pretty decent if maybe you're looking at building another carrier Nebulon. Now, the Nebulon is not the best carrier, but one of the reasons it's not the best carrier is because the best you can get out of it, is that one version's only a 1 squadron, the other one's a 2, and 2 are usually just barely getting by carriers. But if your theme is, maybe if you're building a theme build, or there's other reasons to maybe run all Nebulon lists like that, the Auxilary Shield Tech guy we were looking at before, maybe you just want to run more carrier Nebulons. And Flight Controllers is actually a pretty decent option. I would have rather had it, with Yavaris, though. That's the problem, is a lot of these would really, really be good with a different title. But since if you're using... if you're using Yavaris, then you won't have access to Weapons Team. You have to use Vanguard to have access to the Weapons Team slot. So if you're running Flight Controllers, maybe you want 2 carrier nebulas, and you want the first carrier nebula to take, to be like the clearing out activation. And you want that one to basically activate all of your squadrons that are going to go forth and clear out all the TIE fighters, and then the Yavaris goes afterwards, sends in the B-Wings, and they do the bombing run. Then that is maybe an option for you. So there's a little bit. Again, not even close to being broken, but another option. And you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm fine with having more options, even if they're not ultra competitive, super amazing options. Even if they're just kind of okay options, that's cool. Now, Gunnery Team is definitely one that you could take. You've got that strong front arc with the 3 red dice in there, possibly more than that, depending on what turbo laser upgrades you put. That's good. Gunnery Team is a decent option. Problem is, your front arc is so narrow, your chances of having multiple ships in that arc are slim, and so then you're looking at Gunnery Team maybe for your side arc. That could be useful with an Akbar build. Akbar Nebulons could be a thing. I've been running Akbar Nebulons for a long time. I would love to see more of it. So that's a thing. Ordnance experts, generally, you never want to take this because you don't have any black dice. The only exception might be if you're planning on running a Sato build. You could use this to reroll your black dice for Sato. But then at the same time, wouldn't you rather just take Kaitkin and Sholin? And this way you can also reroll your red dice if you need to. I don't know. It really boils down to if you think you can reliably get a double arc and have, more more black dice, every single shot, twice a turn, and they all come up blank, and you really need that many rolls. I feel like Kaitkin and Sholin is just the stand-up better option for something like this over Ordnance experts, even with a Sato list. Well, with outside of a Sato list, this Ordnance Experts is absolutely get it out of here. There's no reason to ever run it. So I would never run Ordnance Experts, and it based on what we know now of what is coming. If something else is coming that's going to change that in the future, then so be it. Ruthless Strategist is a good anti-squadron option if you really want to take advantage of your escort version with the 2 blue dice. Because then even obstructed shots, you'll still be able to make the attack. So that's an option. You could probably go for you to be more of a anti-squadron version. The only problem I have with that is, well, sometimes it's better to, I don't know. It might be better to wait until, we get a red for the rebels, but they don't really have one yet. And I think the whatchamacallit has got a red in it. The next ship that's coming out, the Starhawk. I think it looked like it had a red printed on the cardboard base, but still that's not out yet. So I mean, if you were looking for a good option for Ruthless Strategists, this is it. But it's not the only one that has that, and at the same time, also this would kind of require you to put yourself fairly close to squadrons to get a lot of shots on them. I feel like that might be better on like a bigger ship. But then again, bigger ships probably want to take gunnery teams, so maybe Ruthless Strategists is good for that. If you bring a whole bunch of Z95s, possibly. Sensor Team, I've never really liked Sensor Team. Sensor Team works best, I think, if you're comboing it with something else that like really, really wants that accuracy. Other than that, maybe you're going to use it to try to take out a flotilla, but you don't have enough other dice left over. So your front arc, you're just going to spend a die to turn another die to an accuracy. You're not even going to be able to take out a flotilla with that, because if you stop the scatter, then they just cancel they evade the other die. There's only one die remaining. So, it's like I just don't like Sensor Team with a Nebulon either. Veteran Gunners is decent. It's decent, but at the same time, Caitkin and Sholin is better. Like Caitkin and Sholin have completely made Veteran Gunners garbage, except for the fact that Veteran Gunners are multi-faction. And then you have weapons battery techs, which, okay, they're all right. You can turn an accuracy into a crit. Again, not the greatest thing. Maybe if you're running Dodana and you've got, and you're really trying to force those crits, there's some use for that. But then again, a lot of times when you only have red dice, I feel like weapons battery techs is better if you're fishing for specific crits. Usually if you're fishing for blue crits, because you have a much better chance of getting a blue accuracy. And, that blue crit is usually a lot more important. So out of this, there's not that many that are great. I feel like Gunnery Team and maybe Caitkin and Sholin are some of my favorites. Ruthless Strategists and Flight Controllers for some of the slightly outside the norm type of builds. But none of them are must-haves. Like I could see running Vanguard and not taking a weapons team at all. Especially if points is the issue. If you just want the redirect, then maybe you'll just do that. You don't have to take a weapons team, I think, with this title. And that's really, I think, my big takeaway from this video is, like, it's okay to not put a weapons team on a Vanguard. I think so. But let me know if you disagree. That's the beauty of it, because that's just my opinion, right? And I try to inform my opinion to you, like, here's why I think what I think, but you are totally free to have a different opinion about it. I mean, we can totally talk about that, because I am wrong sometimes, or sometimes I will misread something. I make mistakes all the time, and it's one thing that happens when you're on the internet. You make mistakes, and they live in infamy online forever, and everyone lets you know about it forever, and you can never escape your failures. But anyway, so that's what happens. So it's totally fine if you disagree. Let me know, but I don't think you have to take it. Let's look at some builds. So we were talking about Sato. So if you're running Sato, maybe you wanted, maybe you wanted to have him be a little bit defensible, right? Now, I mean, as much as I was talking about the Auxilary Shields team, I think that another option is maybe running engine techs in place of that, depending on how well you want to line up that front arc, and with Sato, maybe you do. So I put this one together. This is a list if I had him on here. He might not be on here, might be somewhere else. But here's a Gunnery Team option. And because, we're going to be sending squadrons up, we're going to try to use that front arc twice. I put Expert Shield Tech on here. Now, Expert Shield Tech is amazing because it'll let you spend a redirect to just cancel a damage. So that's amazing. I love that because now you can brace and bring it down by one more. That's also good squadron resistance as well. And it's a really good squadron resistance. I like that ability a whole heck of a lot. It's also really, really useful once all those shields run out, that you can now be like, oh, all right, well, I can still use that redirect token. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a really beautiful thing. I put engine techs on here because we'd have to try to make sure we line up our position appropriately, but I went with XI7 for our turbo laser in this case because, hey, if we can get the 2 shots, that's great. Especially if they can roll a couple of black dice on each of them, that's great too. But especially with things like the Super Star Destroyer coming out, right? We are going to see, I think, more people being able to stop special critical effects. And since we don't have ordnance on here anyway, those black dice are really just going to be damage. We're just trying to get a whole lot of damage out of this. So in this case, XI7, granted, I could have went Spinal, or I could have done something else to add extra dice to my front arc. But here I'm like, well, all I really need to worry about is the 2 dice. That's the most important thing, is making sure I have 2 dice to throw on my target. And that's kind of why Engine Tex is there. But also, XI7 is going to stop you from redirecting all of that damage. So if I do roll 2 black, maybe I concentrate fire. Maybe I do Engine Tex, or I just keep the nav token, because I think you do a balance here between nav and concentrate fire. So maybe I could get 3 black dice. But let's just say I have two black dice and a red die. Let's say I average about 5 damage from that attack. If I'm lucky, I mean, you could get 6. But let's say I get 5. I don't want you redirecting it all over the place. I mean, maybe you brace to 3, but now you still have to take 3 in the front, and you can redirect 1. You want to burn your redirects for only 1? And that's another thing. This is good XI7 defense with the Expert Shield Techs too, because, well, no, I won't lose the shield. I won't redirect 1. I'll just make 1 vanish and then keep my other shield. So that's kind of cool. And then Gunnery Teams is going to let you make that type of attack twice if you can manage it. It's tricky to do that, though, so this is something, and that's why I put Engine Techs over there, but let me know if you would take the Auxiliary Shield Techs instead. If we were going support carrier, I would give Vanguard to the Nebulon B Escort Frigate, and maybe I would, put Flight Controllers on there, so this way, like I was talking about before, I send these squadrons up, have them clear out the TIE fighters, so then Yavaris can come later on, and not have to worry about being tied up. And to facilitate that, we put Fighter Coordination Team and Flight Commander on there, so I can, squadron, okay, no problem, let's move these guys up a little bit more, and then after I move, boom, now send them forward and engage with extra dice. It's always fun. This type of build, though, if you're running escort frigates, you're probably going to want to have tokens on these ships. So maybe first round, squadron command, stockpile the token, or have a couple of GR75s feeding you tokens, so this way your squadron value will almost be 3 most of the time, at least effectively. It won't be printed 3, so you can't Fighter Coordination Team, 3 people, but, you can still, hopefully activate 3 squadrons and do the best you can with what you got. So that's another option. And of course, like if we were just going the full-blown thing, we've got this is just kind of a joke, but I say a joke, but I think this might become more of a thing. Like if I was running Akbar Nebulons, right? I'd just run all 4 titles. We got 4 titles now. And that's awesome. I love that we have 4 titles. And, I'm a big fan of these guys. So we've got, at the top, we've got our Vanguard. We've got Akbar on there. And then, I want to protect Akbar. So I put Auxilary Techs on there. I've got the Expert Shield Techs as well. Enhanced Armament, because, of course, I think I put Enhanced Armament on just about everybody in here. But I also put the Redemption on there, so this way we can get our engineering up a little bit. So everybody's going to get extra engineering. So they have an engineering value of 3. So if everybody does an engineering value first turn with Auxiliary, the Auxiliary team, or Auxiliary Shields team, rather, if you do engineering first with Redemption out there, now you have 4 points. And now you just regenerate. You don't have to transfer at all. So this is also, I feel like it's also a buff. Like Rebellion in the Rim's also kind of giving us a buff to other titles that are already there, which is cool. So that makes me happy. We've got our Yavaris out there with Flight Commander, Fighter Coordination Team, and Enhanced Armament, and then of course we have Salvation, because why not? And we have him a little extra protection. We put Major Durlin on him as well. So even though he won't have the redirects, he can also stop an extra damage coming in. And of course we would have some fighters and stuff too, because this isn't even that many points. We got points left over after this, so you could do whatever you want. But this is a fun thing to do, and especially against superstar destroyers and things and huge big ships like that you're going to continue to see. Nebulons with Ackbar is definitely, I think, worth trying out again. It's worth a new look. This extra title fits into it. And you can trim these guys down a little bit. You can take Lando off of there. You can take Major Durlin off of there if you need to. You don't have to run Yavaris if you're going to go Squadron Light. You don't need Yavaris on there. But if you want to be well-rounded, you probably want a couple of squadrons at least. There's a lot of ways you can trim this down a little bit, but I don't think it's super necessary. And you could take Salvation out of there too if you really want to focus on doing the Ackbar thing. But I like Salvation because if they try to say, you can't side arc me, I'm like, okay, well, good, I'll just front arc you and then be even more deadly, So it's a fun, just kind of a throw together of the fact that you can use all four and have points left over and different ways to run all of them with Ackbar in this particular case. So there's a lot of different things you could go with, but I think the Vanguard's a pretty cool title. I don't think it's broken. I don't think it's OP. I don't think it's too strong. I think it's just a viable option that can complement several different builds without feeling overpowered. But I think its best place is in a multi-Nebulon list, and I think multi-Nebulon lists are now possible because of the other upgrades that come with Rebellion in the Rim. And that is what I think of the Vanguard. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. I can't wait to talk more about everything else that comes in the Rebellion in the Rim, and I can't wait to get some more previews of the other stuff that we're going to be getting, in our Onager and in our Starhawk, and we got so much more to talk about with Star Wars Armada. But I think this is, I think this is a good time to be an Armada player. So, yeah, and then we've got Clone Wars that are going to be coming late next year. We still got a long ways to go, but we've got lots of new stuff to keep us entertained until that time. Alright guys, that's all I got for you today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I also want to thank my patrons on Patreon. You guys definitely help make this all possible, so thank you so much. And as always, have a great day.